The blonde Ukrainian woman stepped off the plane, hair gleaming under the Philippine sun, eyes wide with curiosity, and a heart ready for adventure. The moment she left the airport, the first wave of heat and humidity hit her. It was different from the crisp winters of Kiev she was used to, but she felt alive. Everything was vibrant. The colors, the noise, the energy. And she smiled, adjusting her backpack straps. She had come to the Philippines to explore the culture, the people and the food, but more than anything, she had come to see what all the fuss about the Filipino way of life truly meant. Her first encounter with a Filipino was at the taxi stand. "Mahal po?" she asked hesitantly, attempting to use her limited Tagalog. The driver grinned. "Mahal? Gusto mo ba ng taxi? Sige na, pasakay ka." She nodded, hoping she had said something right, though she wasn't entirely sure what she had agreed to. The driver's laughter was infectious, and she realized that in the Philippines, even small misunderstandings were a form of shared joy. Her journey began in a small barangay, where families lived side by side, cooking over open fires and sharing laughter that seemed to carry over every fence and through every open window. The Ukrainian woman noticed how naturally neighbors interacted, how greetings were genuine, and conversations included everyone, not just the people directly involved. She had grown up in a society where politeness often kept people distant. Here, politeness was combined with warmth, and it was everywhere. Her first encounter with a uniquely Filipino word came over a meal. "Pasalubong," said a cheerful woman who had invited her to lunch. The Ukrainian woman paused mid-bite. What?" she asked, trying to pronounce it like the woman did. She had been expecting maybe a greeting, a dish, a spice. But instead it was something more. She watched as the Filipino woman handed her a small bag of local sweets. "It's something to bring home," she said with a smile, and suddenly it clicked. It wasn't just a word. It was a gesture, a symbol of care, a miniature act of love and connection. The blonde Ukrainian laughed, realizing that in her culture, gifts could be formal, transactional, or scheduled. Here, it was spontaneous, personal, and entirely heartwarming. The days that followed were full of similar moments. The woman learned that phrases she had assumed were simple were layered with meaning and context. When someone said "sige na," she initially took it as encouragement, but quickly discovered it could mean anything from "go ahead" to "stop bothering me," depending on tone, gesture, and timing. She found herself laughing and face-palming in equal measure as she misinterpreted instructions, invitations, and even casual conversation. One afternoon, she tried to help a neighbor carry a bag of rice. "Sige na, tulungan kita," said the neighbor. She picked up the bag, only to have it nearly crush her. The neighbor laughed heartily, clapping her on the back, while she squealed and struggled. The physical comedy was unmistakable, but the warmth behind it made her laugh harder than she had in months. Even simple routines became exercises in understanding Filipino humor. She asked a local boy where the restroom was and was met with the reply, "Ligo ka na." She blinked. "Excuse me?" The boy grinned, gesturing vaguely toward a small bath area nearby. "Ligo ka na," he repeated. She realized he meant she should wash up before asking questions, but the literal translation made her giggle uncontrollably. These were the moments she began to treasure: language, laughter, and life, mixed in ways she had never experienced before. One evening, she attended a small-town fiesta. The streets were alive with music, dancing, and vendors selling everything from barbecue skewers to brightly colored kites. She wandered through the crowd, noticing how everyone greeted her with curiosity and smiles. Children tugged at her hands to show her a game, women offered her samples of local delicacies, and men nodded politely before returning to their conversations. She realized that pakikisama, a term she would later learn meant harmony and camaraderie, wasn't just a word. It was the lifeblood of community interaction. The Ukrainian woman was especially fascinated by the Filipino approach to social hierarchy and respect. Elders were treated with deference, but in a way that didn't feel rigid or cold. Younger people joked with their elders, played pranks, and laughed together, yet there was always an underlying current of respect. She felt both included and guided, welcomed and nurtured. In her mind, she compared it to the often stark contrast in her own country between formality and emotional closeness. Food continued to be a source of comedy and delight. When offered balut, a fertilized duck egg, she hesitated, inspecting it like it might explode. She remembered the warning from a local, "Just eat or you'll regret it." She bravely took a bite, and her eyes widened. The taste was not what she had expected, yet somehow, in the chaotic, joyful energy surrounding her, it tasted like courage and friendship. She laughed, tears in her eyes, at the absurdity and wonder of it all. The Ukrainian woman also began to notice how emotions were expressed differently. In the Philippines, crying, laughing, and joking often happened in the same breath. Someone might scold a child, laugh at their clumsiness, then immediately offer a sweet treat. She realized that emotional expression was not compartmentalized. It was layered, dynamic, and deeply human. She tried it herself, laughing at small mistakes, wiping away tears from spicy food, and exclaiming with delight at the tiniest of gestures. As the days passed, she became more attuned to subtleties in language. Words like hiya carried embarrassment, shame, and politeness all at once. Misunderstandings became lessons. Lessons became laughter, and laughter became connection. She found herself repeating words awkwardly but proudly, trying to master the rhythm, tone, and meaning behind each one. Her attempts were often met with gentle teasing, yet always with patience. She began to understand that Filipino humor wasn't just about jokes. It was about love, inclusion, and the shared absurdities of life. By the end of her first week, the Ukrainian woman had a growing sense of belonging. Strangers had become friends, food had become a language, and the playful chaos of gestures, words, and laughter had become comforting. She realized that part of what made the Philippines special was its ability to turn even confusion into joy. Every misstep in language, every literal misinterpretation, every laugh and exclamation was a reminder that life was meant to be shared, and shared wholeheartedly. Even when she got lost on the way home from the market, the people around her didn't scold or hurry her along. Instead, they guided, joked, and invited her to try street snacks she hadn't intended to buy. She took a deep breath, realizing that she had never felt this welcomed in a new place before. The smiles, laughter, and warmth of strangers had created a sense of home. The blonde Ukrainian woman had started this journey, expecting to learn words, phrases, and customs. What she hadn't expected was to learn about heart. Every Filipino word she stumbled over, every cultural misunderstanding she navigated, and every moment of shared laughter added to a growing emotional tapestry. She understood that the humor was inseparable from the heart, that the words she had feared would confuse her were the same words that could connect her deeply to people she had just met. She went to bed that night, with her mind spinning from lessons learned, laughter shared, and the joy of discovery. For the first time in a long while, she felt like a small part of something bigger, a culture rich in warmth, humor, and connection. She drifted off to sleep with a smile, dreaming of what the next week would bring, eager to mispronounce another word, eat another unusual dish, and laugh alongside people who had already started to feel like family. The blonde Ukrainian woman woke to the distant sound of roosters crowing, birds calling from the coconut trees, and vendors shouting over the morning market's cacophony. She rubbed her eyes, stretched, and smiled. Every day in the Philippines was a new adventure, and she was beginning to understand that learning the language meant more than memorizing words. It meant understanding a worldview, an unspoken rhythm, and a sense of humor that came naturally to everyone around her. Her first encounter that morning was with a neighbor carrying a basket of mangoes. "Sarap ng mangga, subukan mo," said the woman cheerfully, offering one. She took a bite, the juice running down her chin, and laughed. The neighbor laughed too, pointing at the juice. "Sige, kain mo na," she encouraged. The Ukrainian woman nodded, realizing that sige could be both an invitation and a gentle push. The nuances of tone, timing, and context made every word a puzzle she delighted in trying to solve. She had learned sige na before, but now she felt its deeper layers, the mix of insistence, encouragement, and affection embedded in casual speech. Later, she wandered to the local sari-sari store, where she overheard two women discussing a shared favor. "Alam mo, utang na loob talaga," one said. The phrase caught her attention. She had heard it before, vaguely, but now she wanted to understand. The literal translation, debt of gratitude, didn't quite capture the depth. She asked politely, "What does utang na loob really mean?" The woman smiled warmly, patient with the foreigner. "It's when someone helps you and you never forget it. You return the kindness not just once, but as a way of life." The Ukrainian woman nodded, amazed. She thought about her own culture, where favors could be transactional or temporary. Here, it was woven into the fabric of relationships, a moral compass expressed through generosity, loyalty, and memory. The morning continued with small yet hilarious miscommunications. She asked a young man for directions to the church, and he said, "Bahala na." She froze, unsure how to respond. "Bahala na?" she repeated. He shrugged, smiling. Later, she learned that bahala na was a phrase of trust, surrender, and courage all rolled into one. It was the Filipino way of saying, "I've done my best. Now the rest is up to fate." The nuance was lost on her at first, and she laughed at herself, realizing she had nodded vigorously and followed him, thinking he had given precise directions, only to end up in someone's backyard. Everyone around her laughed, including the homeowners, who offered her fresh coconut water and a mop to clean up after herself. She joined in, laughing at the absurdity while learning that in the Philippines, mistakes were often invitations to connection rather than embarrassment. Her afternoons were spent in a whirlwind of language, laughter, and life lessons. The local kids loved teaching her slang, gesturing wildly and correcting her pronunciation. "Hindi ganyan ang sabi," they would exclaim, pointing at her mouth. She would try again, exaggerating the syllables, and they would clap and cheer, delighted at her persistence. The Ukrainian woman felt an overwhelming sense of warmth. In her own country, she had often felt judged for missteps. Here, mistakes were celebrated as a form of engagement, a way to bond and share joy. Food remained a constant source of humor and amazement. She had been invited to a neighbor's home for lunch and found herself confronted with a pile of dishes she couldn't identify. "What is this?" she asked, pointing to a dark stew. "Adobo," came the cheerful reply. She tasted it, nodded enthusiastically, and then asked about a small dish of sticky rice and sweet banana slices. "Kakanin," explained the host. She tried to repeat the word, mispronouncing it horribly, but the host laughed, not mockingly, but warmly. Every bite, every mispronunciation, every shared smile became a small thread in the tapestry of her experience. The blonde Ukrainian woman also began to notice deeper cultural nuances in expressions like hiya. At first, she took the term to mean mere embarrassment, but over time, she realized it carried layers of respect, social awareness, and emotional intelligence. She saw it in the way a teenager deferred to her grandmother, in how shopkeepers bowed slightly before speaking, and in the small hesitations before someone corrected her pronunciation. It was an awareness of others' feelings embedded in every interaction, a gentle moral compass expressed in everyday gestures and speech. One evening, she joined a community karaoke session, invited by neighbors who insisted she sing. She nervously took the microphone, her blue eyes wide, her blonde hair catching the fading sun as she faced a room full of enthusiastic locals. She had no idea what song to sing, so she chose a simple pop tune she knew from home. The moment she opened her mouth, the audience erupted in laughter. Not at her singing, but at the unfamiliar accent she brought to their familiar music. She joined in the laughter, realizing that humor was universal. By the end, she was clapping, singing along, and even performing a few Filipino songs she had learned phonetically. Karaoke became less about skill and more about participation, joy, and shared human experience. Her nights were spent journaling and reflecting on her day, noting every funny miscommunication, every word she had stumbled over, every expression she had misread. She laughed at her own mistakes, calling a dog Bayboy once, mistaking a pork roast for a pet, and attempting to use po excessively, which earned her playful teasing. Each error became a story, each story a memory, and each memory a bond with the people around her. As the days unfolded, she noticed her own transformation. She laughed more easily, embraced confusion, and developed an emotional flexibility that allowed her to experience life fully. Filipino expressions had become more than words. They were keys to understanding relationships, humor, respect, and love. Phrases like pakikisama no longer required explanation. She felt the concept in the laughter shared with her neighbors, the patient guidance from children, and the spontaneous invitations to join celebrations. She also learned the importance of generosity and reciprocity embedded in everyday interactions. When she brought small gifts from home, locals were delighted not just by the items, but by the gesture itself. When someone offered her a snack, she was overwhelmed by the sincerity behind it. She began to understand how utang na loob and similar expressions formed a network of emotional currency, an unspoken code of care and gratitude. Even errands became lessons in humor and humility. Visiting the wet market, she attempted to haggle over vegetables. "Magkano ito?" she asked, expecting a precise number. The vendor replied, "Ay, bahala ka na." She froze, then laughed, realizing that the phrase meant, in essence, "Take it or leave it, my friend. Do your best." She negotiated awkwardly, fumbled with pesos, and eventually walked away with her bag, grateful and laughing. The lesson was clear. In the Philippines, life was negotiated with humor, kindness, and trust rather than rigidity. By the end of part 2 of her journey, the blonde Ukrainian woman had grown more confident, more emotionally open, and more deeply connected to her surroundings. Every laugh, every mispronounced word, every small act of kindness had deepened her understanding of Filipino culture. She realized that humor, language, and human connection were inseparable. The Filipino way of navigating life, full of expressions layered with meaning and emotion, had become a mirror for her own growth, teaching patience, joy, humility, and the importance of embracing confusion with a smile. Her heart felt fuller than ever. The expressions she had struggled with at first were no longer confusing. They were treasures, keys to laughter, connection, and shared humanity. She understood, in a profound way, that learning a culture meant immersing oneself in its language, gestures, mistakes, and triumphs. She was ready for the next chapter, eager to discover even deeper layers of meaning, even more expressions that could make her laugh, cry, and marvel at the simple yet extraordinary ways Filipinos communicated with one another. And so, with a deep breath of the tropical evening air, she looked forward to tomorrow. Another day, another phrase, another lesson in love, humor, and humanity awaited. The morning light spilled across the neighborhood, illuminating the vibrant streets that had become familiar, yet endlessly surprising to the blonde Ukrainian woman. Today, she was determined to tackle even more of the Filipino language and customs that had both delighted and confounded her over the past weeks. Armed with a notebook filled with scribbled phrases, pronunciations, and observations, she stepped outside, her blue eyes scanning the street with anticipation. Her first encounter was at the local bakery, where a line of people waited for freshly baked pandesal. She attempted to greet the cashier with a practiced, "Magandang umaga po," only to be met with a bright smile and a friendly, "Sige, pila ka na." She paused, puzzled. She had heard "si" countless times, but paired with "pila ka na," she realized it was less about the word itself and more about the rhythm of the invitation, an insistence mingled with friendliness. Nodding with a laugh, she joined the line, attempting to mirror the easy camaraderie she saw around her. As she waited, she overheard a conversation about an upcoming fiesta. "Huwag mong kalimutan ang pasalubong, ha?" one woman reminded another. The Ukrainian woman furrowed her brow. She remembered pasalubong vaguely, gifts for people back home, but the cultural weight of it was something she was only beginning to grasp. She later asked a neighbor to explain further. "It's not just a gift," the neighbor said gently. "It shows you care, that you remember the people you love even when you're away. It is love in a tangible form." The blonde woman nodded, realizing how even small gestures were embedded with emotional significance in Filipino life. Her next adventure took her to the barangay hall, where a community meeting was in progress. She sat quietly, observing, attempting to follow the discussion. Every now and then, a phrase like pakikisama or utang na loob floated through the air. She had encountered these before, but now she noticed the way people's voices softened. Gestures became more deliberate, and smiles accompanied every mention. It was more than words. It was a social language of respect, reciprocity, and emotional intelligence. The Ukrainian woman marveled at how deeply these expressions were woven into the fabric of daily life. Later, she accompanied a neighbor to the wet market, where haggling was both art and sport. She tried to participate, repeating phrases she had learned. Magkano po ito? And pwede ba ng kaunti? The vendors smiled, laughed, and sometimes shook their heads, gently correcting her. She mispronounced konti so badly that a vendor jokingly asked if she was trying to invent a new word. She burst out laughing, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and delight. The laughter of the people around her was not cruel. It was warm, inviting, and inclusive. She began to understand that humor in the Philippines often served as a bridge between strangers, a gentle way to welcome, rather than exclude. In the afternoon, she attended a small family gathering, invited by neighbors who had grown fond of her persistence and curiosity. She was introduced to dishes she had never encountered: sinigang, pinakbet, and lechon kawali. As she tasted each, she attempted to describe them using the limited vocabulary she had. Masarap po, pero parang something from home? She said awkwardly, trying to capture flavors that had no exact parallel in Ukraine. Her hosts laughed, not mockingly but fondly, correcting her and teaching her the correct terms. By the end of the meal, she felt a profound sense of belonging. Food, she realized, was a language in itself, rich in memory, culture, and love. The evening brought her to a local karaoke bar, a place she had grown to love for its chaotic charm and emotional honesty. She attempted to sing a Tagalog ballad she had learned phonetically, her voice shaky but sincere. The crowd cheered her on, laughing at her accent yet appreciating her effort. A young man leaned over and whispered, "Bahala ka na," teasing her gently about the next verse. She froze, remembered the earlier lessons about the phrase, and laughed. The humor was layered, linguistic, cultural, and human. She sang the next line with exaggerated confidence, earning applause and laughter alike. As the night deepened, she reflected on her journey. Each phrase she had struggled with, hiya, bahala na, pakikisama, utang na loob, was now more than a set of words. They had become touchstones of understanding, empathy, and connection. She realized how language could shape relationships, how subtle shifts in tone, gesture, and context could convey profound respect, care, and humor. The blonde Ukrainian woman felt herself changing, her worldview expanding to accommodate perspectives that were once foreign, but now deeply resonant. Her adventures continued the next day with a trip to a coastal barangay, where she observed fishermen unloading their catch. She tried to ask questions, fumbling with her Tagalog. Magkano po ang The fisherman laughed gently, finishing her sentence for her, and offered her a freshly grilled fish. She tasted it, savoring the smoky flavor, and attempted a compliment. Sarap po! The fishermen nodded approvingly, their smiles wide. Through simple words, shared meals, and laughter, she was learning the invisible code of Filipino hospitality, a combination of generosity, warmth, and gentle humor. Later, she visited a local school. Invited to participate in a cultural exchange activity, she attempted to teach a few words in Ukrainian, while learning Tagalog phrases from the students. They laughed at her accent, she laughed at theirs, and together they created a shared vocabulary of joy and mispronunciation. She realized that learning a language was not merely intellectual but deeply emotional. Each error, each correction, each moment of shared amusement built trust, connection, and understanding. One evening, she attended a town fiesta, a celebration full of color, music, and community. She danced clumsily, sang off-key, and joined in games she barely understood, laughing the entire time. The townspeople treated her as one of their own, appreciating her effort, celebrating her presence, and gently teasing her mistakes. The blonde Ukrainian woman felt a wave of gratitude and humility. She understood now that the Filipino expressions she had struggled with were not merely linguistic hurdles. They were invitations into a world of connection, joy, and human warmth. She also began to understand the subtler aspects of Filipino humor and social interaction. Observing families and friends, she saw how teasing and playful sarcasm were forms of bonding, how laughter could diffuse tension, and how small gestures, offering a snack, sharing a story, correcting pronunciation gently, built networks of care. Humor and kindness were inseparable, intertwined with language and culture, forming a moral and emotional framework that guided daily life. As part 3 drew to a close, the blonde Ukrainian woman reflected on her journey. She had arrived in the Philippines expecting to learn a language, but she had gained so much more. She had learned patience, humility, empathy, and the joy of embracing mistakes. She had learned that laughter could bridge cultures. That language was a living, breathing expression of values, and that human connection transcended words. Her adventures in mispronounced phrases, failed haggling, karaoke disasters, and shared meals had transformed her. She now spoke Tagalog with confidence, though still imperfectly, and more importantly, with understanding. She could feel the warmth behind utang na loob, the trust, behind bahala na, and the gentle insistence behind sige na. These phrases were no longer foreign. They were a lens through which she could see the beauty, humor, and humanity of the people around her. By the end of this chapter in her journey, the blonde Ukrainian woman had fully embraced Filipino expressions, humor, and values. She laughed more freely, connected more deeply, and saw life with a richness she had never known before. The experiences had left her heart full, her spirit light, and her understanding of human connection profound. She had not merely learned a language, she had learned a way of life, a way of seeing and sharing love, humor, and kindness in every interaction. With a deep breath of the warm evening air, she looked around at the streets she now called home. Every smile, every word, every gesture had shaped her. She was ready to carry these lessons forward, to share them, and to embrace the adventures yet to come. Her journey was far from over, but she knew she had found something rare and precious: the ability to see the world and herself through the heart and humor of the Filipino people.